But let's start with Bradley Manning. He's the soldier who was found guilty of leaking 750,000 pages of classified government documents to WikiLeaks. A little over 3 years ago, he was sentenced this morning to 35. Did I say 30 years earlier? It's 35 years in prison. He also got a dishonorable discharge, and he was stripped of his rank and his pay. In about 10 years, he will be eligible for parole, so it's not inconceivable he could be out in 10 years. We'll see. He's also getting credit for the 3.5 years that he spent in custody, which, works into that 10 years. As this young man prepares to spend the next, arguably most significant chunk of his life, his 20s and 30s behind bars, maybe his 40s and 50s, we'll see. His being sent to prison raises what I think is a really important question. Bradley Manning was sentenced to 35 years in prison for leaking stories about other people's crimes. And many of those crimes are just as serious as leaking top secret information. Frankly, I think they're more serious. I think murdering people, killing hundreds of thousands of people is far more serious than leaking classified information. So, simple question. Where are the punishments for the people behind the crimes revealed by Manning? Where's the punishment for John Yoo, University of California, Berkeley professor of law, or Jay Bybee? George W. Bush put him on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, lifetime federal judge. Where's the punishment for these two? These were the guys who wrote the infamous torture memos back in August 2002 and March of 2003, which authorized the Bush administration to use certain enhanced interrogation techniques. The rest of the world calls this stuff torture. But the Bush administration chose to use the phrase enhanced interrogation, a phrase that was developed by the Nazis. John Yoo wrote the March 2003 memo, which argued that federal laws on the use of torture, they don't apply to American interrogators overseas. Bybee was Yoo's boss. He authored the earlier 2002 memo in August. And these two memos set up Abu Ghraib, all the abuses, the renditions, the black holes. Detainees at Abu Ghraib were physically and sexually abused, raped, sodomized, waterboarded, and in many cases killed. Yet despite these atrocities, John Yoo and Jay Bybee have yet to face any punishment for their crimes, or at the very least, deplorable actions. But it gets worse. The military commanders who ordered an attack on Baghdad on July 12th, 2007, that killed scores of innocent civilians and 2 Reuters journalists. You remember the video from the helicopter? Again, you see the dead body. You see people dying right in front of you. Whoever ordered that attack and whoever was flying that helicopter and pulled the trigger, we don't even know who they are. But they almost certainly have not been punished. If anything, they got promoted. Manning's leaks revealed that U.S. military officials deliberately withheld information about the killings. That's why he leaked it, because we were covering it up. And it was that video that ignited the firestorm over WikiLeaks and started our government's efforts to hunt down Bradley Manning. And finally, where the hell are the punishments for the Bush administration members who led us into one of the bloodiest wars in history under false pretenses and rigged intelligence? Why aren't the war criminals George W. Bush and Dick Cheney behind bars for killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, authorizing the torture of prisoners of war, and taking the lives of thousands of American soldiers? I mean, very much like LBJ and Richard Nixon with regard to the Vietnam War, there is no doubt in my mind that if there is a hell, these guys are going to rot in it. But how about today? How are Condoleezza Rice and Donald Rumsfeld still walking around free after they lied to us and the world to get George Bush's war? And then there's Colin Powell. Usually he gets ignored, but Powell stood up in front of the United Nations on February 5th, 2003, and told lie after lie after lie to world leaders. And we now know that he was that the people on his staff anyway, the information handed to him was fabricated and that he had been told that it was lies. And he got in front of the UN and he said, my colleagues, every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. These are facts. Despite lying to the world, like the rest of the Bush administration, not only has he escaped any kind of punishment, he's got rich. He's a multimillionaire now. Bradley Manning said that he did what he did because he was disillusioned by U.S. foreign policy that was, in his words, hell-bent on killing and capturing people. He opened our eyes. But the people who actually were hell-bent on killing and capturing people, who actually committed these atrocities, they have yet to spend one day in prison, one day in a county jail, one day even getting a hard question from David friggin' Gregory, let alone 35 years. I mean, Dick Cheney is still treated like he's a human being. George Bush, let's honor him at the White House. Really? Where's the outrage for the crimes that Bradley Manning exposed?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I mean, he stood up like a man and took his medicine, okay? He leaked this stuff, 35 years in jail. Why isn't Bush in the dock?